We've been in the Old Testament, 2 Kings, if you want to turn there, chapter 4. We've been in a series on the life of Elijah. Been talking about a life of ridiculous faith. A life to where you burn the plows and you go all the way with Jesus with, I have decided to follow him and no turning back because I'm burning plan B and I'm going with God all the way with plan A. And I will not be going back. A life of ridiculous faith when he calls us out to dig those ditches. When it doesn't make sense, as he taught us a couple of weeks ago, and God looks at us and he says, okay, show me your faith. Show me your faith. I can do great things. That's not up for debate, but show me your faith, Jeff. Show me your faith, church. And he asked them to get out there and dig those ditches, and we learn that your greatest problem can become your greatest blessing when it drives you to depend on God. Last week we looked at a lady who thought she had nothing except just a little jar of oil. And we learned last week that we need to stop waiting for what we want and we need to start working with what we have. Quit focusing on what we don't have. Quit looking at your life like you don't have nothing and start looking at your life with what you do have and start working with it and give God an opportunity to use it. Because we learn that all God needs is all of you. That's all God needs. There might not be much of you and much of anything that you have to give, but when you give him all of you, he can then transform all of you into what he has created you to be. This morning we want to look at, I didn't ask for this. I want to talk to you on a little different way this morning. How many times in our lives have God has blessed us when we didn't ask for it, but we don't give him the credit for it? I can't tell you how many times he's probably blessing you every day over and over and over and over. And a lot of times we're not even realizing it because we're not focused on it. But what happens when you as a Christian you're doing everything right and everything goes wrong? What happens when there's a crisis in your life and you're out there digging those ditches? You've got greater faith than you've ever had before. And the rain still doesn't come. But you dug the ditches like God said. You did exactly what he asked you to do, and the situation not only does not get better, it gets worse. The path to a greater life, the path to greater ministry, greater purpose, is rarely the path of least resistance. In this world, we're going to have setbacks. In this world, we're going to suffer. There's going to be suffering, and there's going to be pain, and there's going to be heartache. We can't get away from it. It's just a part of the world in which we live in. It's a part of God. God uses it as a part of his plan to take us to where he's taken us. And sometimes we don't even know where he's taken us. All we know is we have left to follow him. We might only have that one word, but we're latching on to that one word and we're saying, God, I'm with you, and God, I'm following you one day at a time, one step at a time, one moment at a time. But you know what? Sometimes we pray with great faith. Sometimes we obey with great faith, and the miracle still doesn't come. Or even worse than that, sometimes God blesses you freely and abundantly, and then let someone or something take it from you. He blesses you. He opens up heaven. He pours out His favor on you. He gives you what you did not have. And then for whatever purpose, He lets someone or something take it back from you. You see, this journey that we're on, the journey of faith, I wished I could stand up this morning and declare to you that there will be no setbacks in your life, that there will be no suffering in your life, that there will be no pain in your life. But I can't say that. I don't know what is in store for you and for me. I know there's going to be, those are going to be intermixed in and through our lives as we embark upon this journey that God has for us. I can tell you this, that sometimes your greatest setbacks become your greatest setups when you allow God to finish the process of what He is trying to accomplish in your life. Don't quit. Don't give up. Don't think your faith is being wasted. Don't think your prayers are going unanswered. You keep pressing and you keep trusting and you keep believing and you keep digging the ditches and you keep running with God. You keep moving forward until God opens up heaven and gives you everything that you need to be able to continue to press forward. Sometimes in this life we get it, sometimes we understand it, and sometimes we don't. But seeing God and experiencing God's glory and His presence and His power is going to be seen and felt in your life more when there is great pain, tremendous setbacks, suffering, heartache, and despair. It's hard, it's difficult, it's dark, heaven is silent. What's going on? I don't understand. God, I've been obeying you, I've been following you, I've been trusting you. God, I just don't get it. But I'm telling you, His presence and His power, when He joins you in the midst of your grief and your despair, you will sense His presence and power, and it will be etched upon you in a deeper way than you could have ever imagined. Because I'm telling you, He shows up even when we're grieving, even when there's sorrow. And when He does, we know it. And what He does in us, we will never forget. And He doesn't do it in a one-day process or a 1 week. It's over a period of time that He does a great work inside of us. We'll talk to you about a lady this morning. We don't even have her name. She's just called the Shunammite, whatever you want to call her. I'm going to call her Shu. She was from Shunan, but she was a Shumanite woman. And we want to talk, first of all, let's write down true character. Because we're going to talk about somebody who's doing everything right and everything goes wrong. True character. Elijah was a traveling prophet. Some of this I'm going to kind of have to paraphrase. We'll read some of the scripture, and some of it I'm going to look at that's not printed there. But Elijah was a traveling prophet, and he would go from one city to the next, and often he would go through this little town called Shunan. And he continually, as he was going through this town, would pass by this particular house where a husband and wife lived. And the only thing that we're really told about this woman, we don't even have her name, so she could be kind of like us. Maybe you feel like you're a nobody. Nobody knows your name. Nobody knows who you are. But I'm telling you, God knows your name, and God knows who you are, and God knows what house you live in, and God knows that you are important and that you matter in the plan that He has operating in this world. So she's a Shumanite a Shumanite woman, seemingly to be a nobody, but yet she has true character. You remember when we talked about character about a year ago, and we learned that it was an engraved mark that is imprinted upon our soul. When we have true character, we have the engraved mark of God that is put upon our soul. So therefore, we are a book. We are an open book to the world, as 2 Corinthians says. We are a letter that can be read by the world. We are a light that can shine to the world, and they can see our true character because it's been engraved and it's been imprinted upon our soul, and other people can see that displayed in our lives and through our lives. I want you to see right there, right at the beginning in verse number 8, that it says that she was a prominent woman. Your version might say that she was a great woman and an influential woman. But this literally means that she was well-to-do. It could mean that she was wealthy. It could mean that she had influence. But I believe what it means more than anything is, yes, she had wealth and she had influence, but more than anything, she had character. She had true character. This was a woman that was living and fleshing out the Christian life and obeying God in things and in matters that nobody else could see. Nobody else knew exactly what she was doing, but she was obeying God and doing what God had for her to do. I want you to see, first of all, point number A, her connection. Now, this is so important because as Christians, we've got to have that connection with God. He is a good father, no doubt. He's a great father, awesome father. But he's so much gooder and so much greater when we're connected to him. When we're in tune with him, and we can hear his voice, and we can be sensitive to that voice, and we can know what God wants us to do. Well, her connection led her to be insensitive to that voice because she was seeing this man that would continually pass by her house over and over and over. So she compelled him and persuaded him to stop in one day and come and eat bread and fellowship. So she was using the gift of hospitality as she was sensitive to that connection that she had with God. And then the text goes on to tell us that as he would pass by on these different days, that he would stop in and he would have fellowship with them. Well, after a matter of time, she perceived something. If you'll read the verses there. She perceived, and she told her husband that this man is truly a holy man of God. I mean, she knew from the conversations that she was having as he would stop in that this was a holy man of God. This was God's man. So she says to her husband, this is big. She says to her husband, let's build him a room. Let's build him a room so that when he's passing by, this great man of God, this holy man of God, can not only come in and us feed him, but we can give him a room. And in that room it lists out that we'll put a bed there, we'll put a lampstand, we'll put a table, we'll put a chair. And this room was going to be the best room in the house. This was going to be a room that they didn't use for any other purpose than this was going to be Elijah's room, to where he could stop in, take a break, get some food, get some rest as he journeyed on to the next city. So we see her connection. Second of all, we see her compassion. Her compassion. Now think about this. She's in tune with God. She's following and doing what God wants her to do in a spirit of service and showing hospitality and just doing things that a lot of people never see, but she was doing it. And then God leads her to talk it over with her husband to build this room. Now, think about it. They're going to gift him a room that's going to be solely built just for him. Now, this is important to see in her character because compassion not only sees a need, but compassion always motivates you to do something about the need that you see. So in other words, you can sit here and you can say, oh, I feel bad, I hurt for that person. That's not biblical compassion. Biblical compassion is where you see a need, you feel the need, you sense the need, and then it motivates you and compels you to do something, to act on whatever behalf that God is leading you to act upon. So they're going to build him a room. So she sees her wealth as an opportunity to be able to bless someone else, to be able to give to someone else. I mean, a lot of times today, do we see our resources that way? Do we see our wealth that way? Okay, God, you've blessed me with this. Now I've got a little bit of wealth. I've got a little bit of resources. Now let me see how I can bless someone else, how I can give to someone else. Most of the time, we would be looking on how we could absorb that on self and what else we could get and what else we could buy, but not this woman. This woman's got character. This woman realizes that her blessings have come down out of heaven to her, and God has been good to her, and God has blessed her. So her Bible-based giving was given to Elijah, building him a room with no expectations of receiving anything in return. Now that's biblical giving. Did you know that? I've learned through the years that you don't let people borrow money. Biblically, you don't let people borrow money. You give people money. You know, if somebody comes to you and they want to borrow something, all that's going to do is make them a slave of yours if you loan it to them, because they're either going to pay you back, or worse than that, they're not going to pay you back, or they're going to be slow about paying you back, and it's going to wind up causing division. So I've learned over the years that if I can't give something to somebody, I'm not going to loan it to them, because I loaned something to somebody one time and it created this wall and this barrier. I didn't even want it back, but I eventually just had to sit down with them and say, listen, it's forgiven. You don't have to give it back, because I could sense the barrier with the other person. So biblically, we should give to others, not loan to others. And this showing compassion, did you know this is just basic standard Christianity? This is something that all of us should be doing, showing compassion, acts of service. You might not have a lot of resources to be able to bless other people with, but you've got something. You've got something that you can help somebody with, that you can serve, that you can do for others. Those acts of service, those acts of kindness, doing good for other people always does good for us. You know why it does good for us? Because it reverses the destructive process of self-absorption. We get so absorbed with us. If we're giving to others and being kind to others and focused on others, it can reverse that destructive, selfish mentality that lies right at the core of our heart so many times. Not only do we see that, we see, third of all, her contentment. Now notice Elijah, he's going to be sitting there one day and he's thinking about all that she's done for him, and now he's talking with his servant and he's saying, now what can we do for her? Call her, get her to come up here. Maybe we can put a good word into the king. Maybe we can do A or B. Find out what it is that we can do for her, because she's been so good to us. Surely we can show some kindness back to her. And I want you to notice her response. She basically tells him that she lives among God's people. I don't know what your version says, but I live among God's people. And literally what she tells him at the beginning was simply this: I appreciate your offer, Elijah, but I really have everything that I need. I'm blessed in so many ways. I not only have my needs met, I've got a lot of wants that have been met in my life, and God has been good to me. And I appreciate it, Elijah, but I'm fine. I'm okay. That was showing her contentment, that she was good with where she was at and not focused on how can I manipulate the holy man of God to be able to get something more for my life? No, she realized, she was grateful, she was thankful for what it was that she had. And I'm perfectly okay, Elijah. All of my needs are completely met. So she disappears for a little bit. Then Elijah is talking with the servant. What can we do for her? What can we do for her? Now notice what the servant says. The servant tells Elijah that her husband is old and she doesn't have a son. So he calls the woman back up, and Elijah tells the lady that this time next year you will give birth to a son. Now, notice the gift that she's going to get here. This is really big now. Follow me. She received the greatest desire of her heart without asking for it. Because she thought that it was not even a possibility anymore. She was evidently much younger than her husband. And the reason why she thought it wasn't a possibility is because the text tells us he was old. He couldn't. Let me just put it to you in English. He can't. Y'all with me? Notice what the lady does there if you read through these verses. She literally, let me paraphrase, says, Elijah, don't mess with me. Don't get my hopes up. Don't deceive me. Please don't throw this out there and it not come to pass. Because she already knew that her husband was old and that he couldn't go there no more. But you know what? I'm here to tell you God's reply was, I can give him one more night. I'm here to tell you, it might only be one night, but I can give the man one more night. And that's all you need is one more night. And it does. I wished it would have broke it down for us, but it didn't. She got her one more night, and she was blessed with her baby. But let's go on to point number 2. And I wished I could read all these verses, but we're running out of time. Let's look at her tested character. What do you do when you're tested? What do you do when your character is tested? And I want you to notice up under this, her crisis. Now the son is born, the baby is born. We might get beyond what you've got right there in your bulletin. Then he's out working in the fields or close to his father. And evidently he falls and he hits his head or something. And he goes crying to the father, my head, my head, my head. And the father picks him up and he brings him to the mother. And it literally, the story tells us that she sits there and she cradles him on the front porch and holds him until he died. Now, I don't know how old he is. It doesn't tell us. I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7. She's holding him. And then he passes away, dies in her arms. But notice what she does. Now, this is a crisis, a huge crisis. She takes the boy up to Elijah's room, and she goes in, and she lays him on the bed of Elijah, and she closes the door, and she walks down, and she calls for her husband to get her a horse and a servant because she's going to find Elijah. She never tells the husband the boy is dead. And he basically says, is everything okay? And I want you to notice what she says. It is well. it is well. We're talking about a crisis here now. What's going on the inside of her right now was not particularly well, but she says it is well. And they get on this horse, donkey, whatever it was, and she tells him, you go, and you don't stop. We don't stop for nothing. If a police is after it, don't stop. Run the red lights, run the stop signs. We are going all the way to where Elijah is. Elijah sees them coming in the distance. And he's like thinking to his servant, he says, you need to go and see if everything is okay with her, if everything is okay with the boy, if everything is okay with the husband. The servant comes to the lady and says, is everything okay? Is everything okay? And you know what she says? It is well. But Elijah noticed something. He noticed that she was in deep despair. And normally God would reveal to the prophet that the boy had died, but God didn't reveal it to Elijah, so he didn't know. So she falls at Elijah's feet during her crisis. And if you want to write down point number B, it's her calmness. Her crisis and then her calmness. She falls at the feet of Elijah. Now you got to notice here, as she falls there at the feet, her dreams have been dashed. Her dreams have been broken. And she's filled with grief and sorrow and pain and heartache. What God had given to me, He had taken back. And she says, I didn't even ask for it. God gave me the opportunity to make a request, to be blessed from Him, to receive something for Him, and I told God everything was okay. I didn't even ask for the boy. But God blessed me with the greatest blessing that I could ever receive, and I didn't even ask for it. Now He has taken it from me. Notice her courage. She falls down at the feet of Elijah. And she literally, verse number 28, if you want to scan all the way down there, she basically challenged Elijah. She says, I told you, don't deceive me. I told you not to get my hopes up. Now look at what you have done to my life. He's dead. Elijah tells his servant to take his staff and to go back to the house, and the lady to go with him and to lay the staff over his head. I want you to notice what the lady did not do. She would not go with the servant. She says, I will not leave you, Elijah. In other words, I'm staying with you and you are going with me. Now, remember, as we learned last week, the prophet literally represents God. So what she was basically saying is, God, I am with you. God, you're the only one that can help me here. God, you're the only one that can get me through this grief and this sorrow and this pain, and I will not leave you. The servant goes ahead, lays the staff upon Elijah. Lays the staff upon the boy. And Elijah and the woman make their way back towards the home. The servant comes out and says it did not work. The boy is dead. But I want you to notice everything turns to a big celebration. Point number D. Elijah goes up into the room. He closes the door, and he literally lays on top of the boy. It says nose to nose, hand to hand, leg to leg, and he prays over the boy. Then it says he gets up, he walks through the house, and he comes back and he lays on the boy again. I've never seen this in Scripture. I've never seen this story until this week. When he laid on the boy the second time, it says he sneezed 7 times. He sneezed 7 times. I guess that means perfection. That's what 7 means. I mean, you talking about holy snot? I mean, that was the most holy snot that ever was in the Bible. Don't think it can't be holy. It might look gross, but it was holy on this day. It was holy because God had resurrected a life, and he had brought hope back and life back where pain and despair was. Now get this. I don't know what your broken dream is. I don't know what it is that has brought pain and heartache and despair. This one thing I do know, maybe you've done everything right. Maybe God has given you things from heaven that maybe you didn't even ask for, and God blessed you with them. And for whatever reason that you can't even comprehend right now, God has taken those things away from you. He's allowed somebody else to do it, or something has taken place to where it has taken the blessing of God from you. And you're left with some suffering and some pain. And you just feel like, did I waste all that faith? Did I waste all that obedience? I mean, where are you, God? I'm here to tell you, you haven't wasted any faith. Does your heart hurt? Yes. Is it painful? Yes. Is there despair? Yes. But I'm here to tell you that same God that lady latched on to through Elijah is that same God that is here in this house today. And he might not raise an individual from the dead and bring back that to you, but I'm here to tell you what he can do. Even though you might not can see it and comprehend it at the present time, he can do for you what nothing in this world can do for you. He can give to you what nothing out there can give to you. You might not know, you might think that there can never be a new normal, there can never be hope again, there can never be excitement again, there can never be life again, there can never be anything good that can ever be made out of what God has allowed to be able to come into my life. But I'm here to tell you, he can make a way. He can work miracles. He can open up the Red Sea. He can give you a new normal. He can give you a new life. He can make you whole again. He can restore the marriage. He can do what nothing out there can do. Don't give up. Don't think your faith is wasted. Don't think all your obedience has been wasted, because it has not. It's just been put in a trust fund. You see, I don't believe there's a prayer or an obedience or anything that is wasted. I believe God puts it into a trust fund. We don't know all the regulations of the trust fund that he has, but he's got it. And when your life matches up with whatever God is doing, you're going to see that come back to you in ways you never dreamed of. But if you quit, you won't see it. If you give up, you won't see it. It's there. And it's going to come your way. But it's going to come your way a little bit at a time. And then it's going to open up at God's time. And you're going to see that what you thought was a setback, and it was painful and it hurt, God actually used it to set you up for whatever it is he's got out there for you. He's got something big. Something big. Let's Let's talk about testifying character. There was this little girl growing up in Forest Park. And I want to close with this. I've told it a couple of times in the past, but I want to close by sharing with you this story about this little girl from Forest Park that God allowed this little boy from Stockbridge, Georgia, to cross paths with over 30 years ago. Over 30 years ago, if you were living in Stockbridge, you didn't go to church in Clayton County. You just didn't. Clayton County was a long ways then. It was a long ways off. How times have changed. But my future wife, and I call her the trust fund girl, because when you look at her childhood and you look at her life, even though there had been a ruling made on the field, you know how they do in professional football? There's a ruling that the referees make on the field. But the coach can throw out a challenge flag. He can challenge the ruling on the field. And you know what happens when you challenge something, as this lady did. She challenged Elijah. And look what happened. In the NFL, when you challenge a ruling, you will get another ruling that either validates the first one or reverses it and changes it to something else. This little girl from Forest Park went through more by the age of 18 than I've been through in my entire life today. She grew up with a mom and a dad that did a lot of partying, and she hated that life. And it was kind of not only the partying life of her mom and dad, but it was kind of passed on to the other three sisters, and they kind of latched on to the same lifestyle that the mom and dad had. And she didn't even know Romans 8:28, but she was challenging in her life all the way back then that all this bad in her life was one day going to work for her good, because she wasn't going to live that way. Her mama died at the age of 36 years old when she was 9 years old. Her daddy would die a few years after that when she was 16 at the age of 44. And her three older sisters at that time were all partying and dysfunctional, and, you know, was everything that she hated and the life that she had been raised in all of these years. So she winds up being homeless and winds up being taken in by her Aunt Cosette. All she knew was this. When she was 14, 15, 16, 17, all she knew was this, is I will not be like that. I will not live that way. I will not. I challenge you, God. I know I'm a part of that. I'm kid number 4 out of this party of 6. And all this despair and all this pain, God, I will not be like that. She couldn't comprehend it all. She didn't know what God was going to do. But the call on the field was, you're going to be like everybody else in your family is. But you know what she did? She challenged it. You know how you challenge it? You got to step your toes up to the line. She challenged the ruling on the field and said, no, I will not be like that. I will not take that legacy. I will not take what the enemy meant for evil and accept that into my life, God. I will not. And upon further review, God changed the ruling in her life from being one that would go down a pathway of dysfunction and discouragement and perpetuate even more of what she hated in her life. God changed it. And when we got married, I married a woman that was full of I will nots and I will. We will not drink, Jeff. We will not do A. We will not do B. We will not do C. You know why? Because she hated it. And I'm glad today that she had all them we will nots, because you know what? If it wouldn't have been all for them we will nots, I might have been willing some. And I might not be where I'm at today. She was hard. She was black and white, no gray. This is how we're going to live. We began our journey together. And I had no idea. So you never know what somebody else is going through, even when you live with them. I had no idea that the whole year that my wife was 36 years old, she thought she was going to die that year because her mom did. That was her fear in her mind. If I could just get through the age of 36. And then on January the 1st, she breathed a sigh of relief that she didn't die when she was 36. And then there was the year that she turned 44. If I could just make it to the end of 44. And she almost did. But in October, she was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 44 years old, and had in her mind all those years of that fear and that horror of I'm going to die just like my mom and my dad did. But you know what happened? In October 44, when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, as we challenged the ruling on the field. We stepped up to the plate and we said, God, we don't like it. We wished it wasn't here. But God, we challenge it. Because God, we know you are a good, good Father. And God, we have walked with you. We have served you. We have done what you have asked us to do. And God, all we know to do now is to worship you. It's to worship you in the midst of this, because God, you're the only one that can heal and touch and restore and give. And you know what? We made it on through all that. 45, 46, 47, 48. And yes, she's 49 and I'm not. But I'm here to tell you this. He's a good, good Father. He's a great Father. And even though her life was so drastically different than mine, I mean, it was night and day. But she looked at that and said, I will not be that. And I look at our life today with 4 kids. I mean, God's even blessed us when we didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for another kid, and God gave me Megan. It's been one of the greatest blessings in our life. We got grandkids coming out to Yim Yang, 2 about to bust out. Me and my wife went and got rid of her expensive Yukon for a 12-passenger van. My wife did. She did. And I didn't even twist her on. She just said, no, I'm going to get that 12-passenger van so we can all get in it and we can go together. It's hilarious. It's in the back if you want to see it. God's blessed us and he's been good. But in the midst of a lot of pain and a lot of heartache. But I'm here to tell you, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I know this. You can challenge it. You can get down on your knees by stepping up to the plate and saying, God, no. God, I don't know how you're going to work it out and figure it out. I don't know how you're going to fix me and make me right. But God, I'm challenging what I am in right now and bringing it to you and asking for you to intervene. That's what I'm asking you to do. As we stand to our feet, I'm going to ask Ty and Miss Gwen. Miss Ty, I'm going to ask her to come down.